SY Raman. Over to you, Nikhil.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you all to today's session focusing on the theme of sharing best practices adopted by internal audit function and their success stories. In this dynamic landscape of modern businesses, the role of internal audit has not been restricted to just traditional compliance measures. Today, it has to guide organizations through the complexities of risk management, regulatory compliances, as well as operational efficiencies. Hence, the significance of sharing the best practices and success stories cannot be overstated. It is through such collective wisdom and shared experiences that we can enrich our understanding, refine our methodologies, and ultimately standardize aspects within our profession. Today, we have the privilege with us for hearing us from our esteemed colleagues and industry leaders who have not only faced these challenges, but also successfully overcome those by implementing best practices that have reshaped their organizations. Their success stories serve as a source of knowledge and inspiration for all of us. I would like to introduce you all to today's session. With us, we have Mr. S.Y. Raman. He's currently the Vice President, Group Internal Audit at IHCL, Indian Hotels Company Limited. He's a seasoned finance professional with more than 35 years of work experience, all of with the Tata Group. 16 years with Tata Tea Limited and 19 years with IHCL. In these 35 years, he's worked in 11 assignments across 7 locations. At IHCL, he has served as Head of Finance at Taj SATS Air Catering Limited, the erstwhile Taj Business SBU, and Taj GVK Hotels and Resort Limited. Mr. Raman is a graduate in commerce from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. He's a chartered accountant, cost accountant, and company secretary. Please welcome Mr. Raman. Next with us, we have Ms. Deepti Rathor. Deepti is a chartered accountant with more than 2 decades of experience in the BFSI sector in India. She is a seasoned professional with experience in internal audit, risk advisory, and business process improvements. She has had a remarkable career that encompasses engagements with both multinational and domestic companies within the BFSI realm, including notable names like Jio Financials, JM Finance, Fed Bank Financial Services, Fullerton India, Barclays, and ICICI Lombard General Insurance Company. Currently, she serves as Head of Internal Audit at Jio Finance Limited. Prior to her role at Jio Finance, she held the position of Head of Internal Audit at Fed Bank Financial Services and Group Head Internal Audit at JM Financial. She was instrumental in establishing the internal audit function at Fed Bank Financial Services and JM Financial, along with the RBI framework. Her contributions extend beyond the confines of her immediate roles, as she writes articles for the leading BFSI magazines and also speaks at industry forums to express her views. Apart from being a fellow chartered accountant, Deepti is also a certified information systems auditor. Welcome, Deepti. Next, we have Ms. Abha Sarda with us, a passionate internal audit professional with 20+ years of experience across diverse industries, spanning multiple geographies. She has spent over 15 years at Tata Capital Group and is currently heading the business and IT audits at Tata Capital. At Tata Capital, she has overseen internal audit of retail lending, large corporate and SME lending, infrastructure financing, mortgages, and private equity. Prior to joining Tata Capital, she's worked with Bennett & Coleman, Deloitte. She's a CA, CIA, CISA by qualification and is adept at providing a wide variety of solutions addressing risks related to business processes, enterprise application, and technology infrastructure. She is a result-driven professional and creative problem solver who is excited to be in the midst of rapid transformation. Welcome, Abha. And last but definitely not the least, we have Mr. Anirban Dasgupta with us. Anirban is the Group Head of Assurance and Internal Audit at RBG Group. Individual internal audit functions of all the 6 group companies, namely KEC International, CIET, Zensar, RPG Life Sciences, Raychem RPG, and Harrison's Malayalam report to Anirban. Anirban reports directly to Group Chairman's Office and ED Chairman's Office, and also to the individual chairpersons of the audit committee of all the operating companies. The ethics offices of all group entities also report to Anirban. In this role, which Anirban started in 2016, he is responsible for leading the group assurance function, which includes strategy, planning and delivery of risk and assurance reviews across all businesses, and includes technical, operational, financial, and compliance audits. Prior to this, Anirban was with Hindalco Industries and led Hindalco's internal audit function for aluminum, copper, and precious metal businesses. Prior to Hindalco, Anirban spent quite a long stint at Risk Advisory Services at PwC, Mumbai and Pune offices. He specialized in industry verticals like core manufacturing, pharma, and life sciences. He predominantly served PwC's Tata Group accounts in India and overseas. Please welcome Mr. Anirban Dasgupta. So friends, without further ado, I extend my warmest welcome to our distinguished speakers as well as all the participants. Let's begin our session and try to pick the brains of all our esteemed panelists and understand with them as we explore and understand the best practices and success stories within the scope of internal audit. So, I'll say ladies and gentlemen on the panel. For the audience to understand, and we have seen different organizations having different sets or different approach in setting up the internal audit function. So before we proceed with some of the other questions for the audience to understand and drive a context, it's important for them to understand how the internal audit structure has been in your organization. Is it co-sourced, in-house, outsourced? What kind of audits do we do? What kind of team size do we have? In addition to internal audits, do we also do some of the other work like investigation, CRM, IFC, or any other compliance activities? So to understand that, let's try to understand from all of you all in your respective organization, what is it or how is it that the internal audit department has been developed and defined and structured? Mr. Raman, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to be here. Feels nice to see so many of you in the audience. I represent Indian Hotels Company Limited. It's generally known as IHCL. People outside know it as Taj because that's the iconic brand that we have. It's a renowned hospitality company, being part of the Tata Group, and it was set up in 1902, so we are 120 plus years old. It's synonymous with luxury and impeccable service. All of us know that. Besides the iconic brand Taj, by the way, has won the best hotel brand in the world 3 times in the last 3 years. And see, the Taj gets the award and I get the claps. And that's what Taj is all about. Besides Taj, we have several brands like Vivanta, Ginger, Selections, Ama, Cumin, and name it. We're still growing. We now have a house of brands. We own a lot of hotels. I'm just giving a background to it. We own a lot of the hotels, but we also managed the hotels of other owning companies. So if suppose somebody is in the construction business, they know how to build a hotel, but they don't know how to run a hotel, they can approach us. So it's called the managed hotels. It's called a managed hotel, not similar to the franchisee model. So currently our ratio of owned hotel to managed hotel is 60-40 approximately. That said, our internal audit function is co-sourced. So our in-house department is 4 members strong, and we take the help of 6 odd firms, and we use their manpower, and then with the help of them, we conduct the audits. We have 200 plus hotels in operation currently, and we have another 100 in the pipeline. So we conduct something like 210 audits currently. It's growing every now and then. We conduct audits of all the units once every year. In addition to internal audit, I'm also in charge of risk management for the organization, and I also conduct investigations and process improvements for the organization.
Thank you so much. We'll move on to Abha now.
Thank you, Nikhil. Good evening, everyone. Feels good to be amongst all of you all. I've been in awe of Raman and Anirban, so in case I faltered today, please pardon me for that. In terms of Tata Capital, we are into financial services, and we all know that it's a phygital world today, partially physical, partially digital. The skewness towards physical or digital would largely depend on the industry one comes from. Financial services has been on the forefront in terms of the digital space. Tata Capital operates both in the physical and the digital paradigms, and both the worlds are very different. So we have a total loan book of about 1,50,000 crores. We are growing at about 40% every year in terms of disbursals. So that's the pace and the scale. In terms of the physical presence, we have close to about 600 locations where a person comes to the branch, he takes a loan, we visit the customer, do a regular credit assessment, and then give a loan. In terms of loan, our loan sizes would vary in terms of a couple of 100 crores to as small as a couple of thousands. So that's the variety of products that we have, from corporate lending to microfinance or financial inclusion. On the digital side, we're also digital first. So we've got about 97% of our customers that come digitally onboarded. And close to about 92-93% of our collections are also digital. So that's the mix of physical, digital, and the variety of products in which we operate. And this was just to give a background in terms of the scale, the complexity. Even in fact, the regulator has been asking for information digitally. Last year, we submitted our financials on 28th or 29th of April. And by 2nd or 3rd of May, we had a whole set of questions coming in from RBI in terms of clarifications, data inputs. So that's how digitally this environment is in which we operate. Having said that, the internal audit team is a completely in-house model at Tata Capital. We have close to 60 people, and we cover roughly about 200 locations and multiple products during the year. It's a completely in-house setup. Only on specialized assignment, maybe like cybersecurity, VAPT, is where we look externally for specialized help. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and good evening, Nikhil and other panelists. Thank you, Murtuza, for having all of us here. I represent the RPG group, and then there are about 6 operating companies in the RPG group, and then there are smaller entities which are essentially startups. So RPG group essentially is the Seat Limited, which is the the iconic tire brand. Then there is a listed entity called KEC International Limited, which is a 2.1 billion infrastructure company spanning across 105 countries in the world, and with manufacturing operations in Dubai, in Brazil, in Mexico, and all over in India. Then we have RPG Life Sciences, which all of us know is a pharma company, RPG Rechem, and RPG Rechem is not a listed entity. Then we have Zensar. Zensar is a mid-tier IT company, which is in Pune. Internal audit per se in the RPG group is 50% of the internal audit effort is going to pure play internal audit. And then around 20% of our effort is going to risk assessment, risk management. We are not formally designated as a chief risk officer. I am not formally designated as the group chief risk officer. But yes, I mean, the risk management committees everywhere, I play a role in that. Then there is some effort which goes into the ethics committees and the whistleblower complaints and several other things. And then there are some in-house audits like IFC and some concurrent audits. And as Deepak was showing those nice charts about CCM, continuous control monitoring, some analytics, some digital things. So all those things put together is the internal audit universe in the RPG group. There are individual points person who are the CAEs of individual operating companies, and everything is rolling up to me. So that is the RPG's internal audit, primarily co-sourced model, and it's a mix of, there are in-house auditors also, and co-sourced auditors because of their skill sets and other things. We get people from the big four firms and the smaller firms also. So that's the RPG internal audit backdrop, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Anirban. So we've seen that there's a mix of co-source as well as in-house internal audit functions across such varied and different groups. Deepti, you've been in this field for more than 20 years. So in your experience, what are the parameters that an organization should consider or should consider while arriving at a conclusion that should my function be in-house, or a co-source model is the best one, or how do you define that in your experience and opinion? What do you think is the right approach to go towards that conclusion?
Right. Thank you, Nikhil, for asking that question, and thank you, Murtuza, for having all of us here. And good to see you, all of you. So overall, drawing inferences from my experience in internal audit, whether it's a hybrid model, blend of in-house or co-source, it all depends on the level and state of maturity of any organization. Internal audit functions in terms of the maturity of the internal audit function. I'll cite some examples of, a couple of companies where I was heading internal audit, where I was instrumental in setting up the internal audit function there. So when we started, we didn't have any team members to start with, and I was, looking for support from, core sourcing or loan staffing as far as it goes. But as far as my experience goes, I would personally prefer that a hybrid model works best, because the in-house team brings in, because they gather the most, because they are into the system where they are very closely working with the management. They understand, the entire end-to-end processes. And having said that, we get the expertise from the industry where, irrespective of whether it's a big four or a mid-sized firm, they get in, industry experience to support us with. That's what my take has been. In couple of industry previous organizations where I'd worked with, we had had a hybrid model. One of the companies, I was having some 60-member in-house team with a blend of co-sourcing, where empaneled auditors were there, who were external audit firms were there to support us with the internal audit. And that worked very best for us. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Deepti. I think that was indeed insightful to understand the different dynamics of how an internal audit department in any organization should be structured and catered to, so as to meet the expectations of all the stakeholders, including the audit committee. Now, we all know that internal audit has been, the internal audit as a function has been organically developing and growing over the years. And there have been countless instances in the past where the organizations across the globe have benefited from the outcome of internal audit. However, the outcome of internal audit actually depends on the approach that we take and also the decisions that we take. So since we have all these esteemed panelists from different organizations present here, sirs and ma'ams, I would like to understand, what are the best practices in the internal audit function which have been implemented by you, including any technological advances or changes that you've brought into your respective teams or departments, so as to meet the expectations of all your concerned stakeholders? So Mr. Anirban, we'll start with you.
Well, internal audit, if you look at the classical internal audit approach and methodology, and I have the experience of looking at it from a Big Four side, as well as looking at from an RPG and a Hindalco side. Now, the approach and methodology that we follow is a classical approach and a classical methodology, which is a risk-based approach, there is a planning phase, there is an execution phase, and then there is a reporting phase and everything. But there are some quick changes that we have done in RPG and in my previous organizations also I have implemented, which are some of the quick takeaways for the audience here, and that is what I want to enumerate here. One is that in the approach and methodology, we have considered the outcome of internal audit as the one most important and essential thing. There has to be value which is protected. There has to be a set of value which is enhanced. So with these two objectives, we have designed our internal audit. And what we have essentially done is that whatever issues, I mean, you can see reams and reams of paper of internal audit observations, recommendation, management comments, implementation responsibility. That is our regular job, right? My objective is that, you know, every observation and every recommendation has to find a place in 4 boxes. And these 4 boxes are 2 sides of the profit and loss account and 2 sides of the balance sheet. That is where I find that, you know, you cannot essentially make a generic comment and go away. A. And for everything there is a factual accuracy and there is a linkage to the financial statements. Of course, there are process improvement and everything. Internal audit, again, every area we have divided into 3 categories. One is essentially compliance. Second one is process and controls, risk process and controls. And the third one is definitely cost optimization. Previously, I personally did not look into cost optimization as one of my objectives. But when you work with the promoter group, that is something which is an emerging expectation of the promoter group, that unless and until you show some benefit to the group, to the promoter, you know, sometimes there is an expectation mismatch. The other thing that we have brought in is that we do not essentially demarcate between an internal control issue and an issue. So essentially for the users and for the stakeholders, I know the users are MDs and audit committees and CFOs and in the chairman's office and everything. They essentially do not understand, this is my take, they do not understand that what is an internal control issue and what is a normal issue. So therefore, we have, you know, erased the difference between, so for us, issue is an issue. So the issue which is an issue for an MD, the issue is the same issue for a CAE also. I will add a little bit of an internal control and a root causing flavor to it. And perhaps the other person will look at it from a completely financial and a you know, business angle. So these are some of the changes, some of the things that we brought in. Another thing is that we have in the entire approach and methodology, in the entire execution methodology, we have stopped going area by area. Suppose we are taking up, let's say, you know, 70 areas at the beginning of the year. And then you divide 70 by 4 quarters and you take whatever 16 areas, 17 areas every quarter. But we have, you know, blurred the lines between areas and we take every issue. So therefore, if an issue in a particular audit area is important, that gets a tatkal benefit. So which is actually escalated without waiting for that entire area to get completed and presented to the audit committee. So this is some of the, you know, quick takeaways I thought I'll share with our esteemed, you know, the audience here.
Thank you so much. I think that was indeed insightful and helpful for all of us to understand. I'd like to ask Deepti to share some of her best practices.
So Nikhil, there has been many and it's been evolving as we speak. The question I ask every day when I go to office is like, how can I add more value to my work? And that, you know, is where I start my day with. Barring internal audit any which ways is a normal thing which we'll have to do. So the whole focus is in terms of adding value, and some of the concepts I wanted to share with the audience is what we have started with. Rather than, and taking again inferences from the RBI directions on the risk-based internal audit, so that we don't miss any big elephant in the room. and hence the audit prioritization in terms of the perceived risk in the control environment as we speak. In terms of best practices, what I do personally is like, having very close engagement and collaborations with the senior management in terms of just understanding what's going on in the company. So for an auditor, it's very important to build a very strong network within the management team so that we are aware of what's happening and we align our audit strategy and plan accordingly so that we stay relevant. That is number one. We have introduced the concept of spot audits. So what it means is, rather than waiting, of course we have an audit plan which we stick, throughout the quarter on quarter. But having said that, the concept of spot or a flash audit is nothing but if at all there is a new process which is being rolled out, immediately, go and just check and give your inputs in terms of assurance to the management that, look, this is where we feel there are, potential gaps which you need to nib it right now. Because when we come for an audit, that time any which ways we'll look for its effectiveness and efficacy. That's the second thing. In terms of, again, adding value is like having more synergies, drawing synergies between, risk, compliance, and audit. So, because when three of these departments are, collaborating, there is where we can draw synergies from each other. So, in one of the organizations where I was heading internal audit, where we developed risk triggers along with the CRO, which were baked into the systems, and where these risk triggers were, throwing patterns of exceptions, which used to be audited by the internal auditors. The field auditors used to go and check to rule out, if at all there was, any anomalies in the trends and patterns that we have seen. Also, in terms of areas where internal audit can add value is in terms of the enterprise risk management. If at all the company is, thinking of developing it, I'm sure many organizations have quite matured enough to have ERM framework in place, but that is where internal audit can actually add value in terms of getting in terms of understanding where the key risks are there and, contributing in terms of the key risk indicators, which the second line needs to, monitor and tag for. So I think these are the places where internal audit can add more value. Of course, from the technology front, again, what I've seen is it's in terms of the evolution and the expectations where it lies for the internal auditors. Nowadays, the enhanced expectations from the management is even before the product goes live, they expect the internal auditors to audit those processes and come up with their, recommendations. Even before any technology developments goes live, it is expected for the internal auditors to look at the systems in terms of the system controls in place and come up, rather than actually waiting for the internal audit to happen. And that is where I feel, as an internal auditor, we can add more value. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepti. So I think we'll move from one BFSI expert to the other. Let's hear it from Abha, her thoughts on this.
Sure, thanks. We've kept it very simple. We've said that, it's better we just keep power of 3, which is just 3 top priorities for a year. And everybody in the team kind of knows that these are the ones that we are targeting. So for instance, for this year, it was something like do more, which is meet more often and really engage with stakeholders. So complete collaboration, making sure whether we have an audit or not, we are meeting with the business teams and the compliance finance functions at least once a month, and if needed, twice as well. So that's one. Second, while it sounds very simple, and people may think that, how is it really a best practice? But we focused on really arriving at the right RCA, which is the root cause analysis. Because till you don't go to that exact 5th why, you're really not going to be able to solve the problem, and you'll keep having persisting issues. So that's something that we've focused on in the current year. We thought it was something very simple and obvious, when we thought of this, but I think that's been the most challenging one in terms of really implementing in the current year. The third, obviously, being every talk is a pitch. So how do we really communicate very effectively? we've internally kind of taken a challenge. It's a very simple approach that when somebody makes a presentation and the other person can, exclude as many words from that and yet communicate the same message effectively. So there's a point accrual system which can get encashed. So these are three simple things that we've kind of taken up for the current year. And every year we take up similar initiatives and focus areas. Apart from that, obviously, since I'm sitting with accountants, I would say data is the new debit credit. So while we've been talking about it for a decade, purple skills are very important. So you need a mix of understanding the functional as well as the digital landscape. So upskilling has been the other focus area that we've been focusing on.
Thank you so much, Abha. Mr. Raman?
So compared to all these stalwarts, mine is going to be a little rudimentary. Well, hotels, as you people know, is manpower oriented, and lots of operational activities keep happening. So there, to burden them with more controls is going to be very difficult. So we developed something called the Taj Positive Assurance Model. We moved away from calling it exceptions. We called it the Taj Positive Assurance Model, or TPAM in short. And we decided to give positive assurance to the management and to the seniors, including the audit committees, on what the state of each unit is. So whether it is a particular hotel or whether it is an air catering facility or whichever. So we developed it originally in an Excel sheet, putting down all the possible risks that we can think of in each function, whether it is a front office or the F&B or housekeeping, laundry, wherever, and then putting controls for that. And over a period of time, we have covered all potential risks that any operations can face. Because it's manpower oriented, the possibility of something going wrong is very high. And when I say something going wrong, it involves fraud as well. So if you had asked me 15, 20 years back whether there was a possibility of a fraud, I would have said fraud was probably number 2 risk. Today, it is not even featuring in my top 20 or 25 risks, because we have enough and more maker-checker put in through the TPAM. So this was, of course, quite rudimentary. It's a model. We digitized it recently. 3 years back, we digitized it and kept developing it. Now, with that, we can do what is called a self-audit, popularly called CSA, Control Self-Assessment. We can do now, with the help of new programs that we have written for that, we can do theme-based audit, what Anirban mentioned. You don't have to do only once a year. At the end of the year, sit and do 70 areas. You can choose whichever area you want and do it as and when possible. That will be possible, again, as Abha mentioned, with smooth flow of data. So these have been done already, and we try not to burden the operations with more and more controls. We convert their own activities, what they do on a daily basis, we convert that into a control. Just add a little more and convert that into a control. I'm happy to say that TPAM is a registered trademark of Indian Hotels. It became 2 years back, and last year we got it patented as well. So it's a patented model that we have. And now, of course, we are adding theme-based audit and area-based audit as we talked about.
Thank you so much. I think just a follow-up question to that, you mentioned about selecting the audit areas and the risks. So what are your top 5 criteria for selecting a particular audit area?
As Anirban mentioned again, it's typically the risk-based model. So you choose from your enterprise risk register, which again I'm in charge of. From there, what flows out at the top, key risks. From there you choose, and it may vary from entity to entity. We have close to 25 legal entities under which these units reside, the group entities. So each entity to entity, it may vary what are the top risk areas. So whilst the the risks in each unit remain the same, but the focus on select areas will be differing from entity to entity and sometimes unit to unit.
Thank you so much, Mr. Raman. I think these were some of the really good insights that all the panelists share, and I for sure I'm going to implement some of these ideas in my organization or in my approach to internal audit, definitely. And that's the thing I actually love about internal audit, which is, one size doesn't fit all. All of these panelists shared so much different insights, different experiences into their respective audit functions of their organizations, which really goes on to show the kind of thought process that goes behind selecting a particular audit, executing that audit, then obviously, managing the entire function and so on. So I think that was some really good insights. Trying to understand the best practices now, let's try to move on and hear some of the live examples, because all of these best practices have been implemented or are being implemented in your organizations. I would like to understand some success stories that have been resulted out of implementing these best practices or any of the other approaches that you follow in your organizations. And while we are at it, I'd like to share one of my success story as well, which happened a few years back in my one of my previous organizations. And interestingly enough, it did not come out of an internal audit, but out of, I'll say an auditor instinct that kind of helped me. So the thing was that, there was a travel desk which used to book the tickets. It was an outsourced travel desk to an external company, and we used to travel for work and so on and so forth. So during one such travel, I had to travel overseas, and because it was an overseas travel, we book in advance, we plan in advance. So obviously we followed that process and booked the tickets. And the model was such that the flight tickets was billed to company. So any tickets that we used to bill was being charged by the travel agency to the company. And then of course the normal process of payment used to happen. Now, unfortunately, because of some unforeseen circumstances, couple of days before my travel, I had to cancel my plan. So obviously, I again followed the process and wrote them an email saying, please cancel my tickets, I'm not traveling. So they did that, the ticket got cancelled. Now, a few days later, it kind of struck me that, the billing is billed to company. How do I know that if I'm cancelling the ticket, are they reimbursing the money back to the company or not? So I went after around 10-15 days to check whether that credit note was given back to the company or not. And to my surprise, it was not. So that was red flag number one that got highlighted that, okay, they are not giving, rather this ticket refund was not given. So then we extended our sample and we looked at entire year's data, and out of which we found at least 30 to 40% of cancellations are not being given back to the company. So then that was a reason enough for us to open the entire Pandora's box, and that company was with us for almost 10 years. So we reviewed all the 10 years data. It got turned into a full-blown investigation, and by the end of it, we were able to recover more than 4 crores for the organization. So that was something which was personally very enriching and satisfying, and of course, adding value to the organization, like our panelists mentioned. And I think that is where it helps that you have to keep your eyes, ears, and mind open. Because when it comes to internal audit, it is not only that you pay attention or you have that auditor instinct while you're doing an audit or an assignment, but you have to keep, be aware about all the functions or all the operations that are going across in your company. You never know where or how you might be able to support the company. So that was one of my personal favorites that I encountered in my career. But I'd like to ask some of our panelists to also share. Abha, we'll start with you.
So Nikhil, one example quite close to what you mentioned, and it's pretty much related to the concept of connecting the dots. So as part of our regular IT audits, we thought, and post-COVID, etc., we thought, let's see how many of the employees are really logging in. And, so we tried tracking in terms of the last login and who haven't logged in for a significant amount of time. While we started with a different objective, what we later figured was that as a part of the employee onboarding process, the employee code gets created before the employee actually joins in. And when we traced it back to small amounts of, payrolls getting processed, we figured that employees who not really joined in were able to get payroll by virtue of a small flaw in the system which said Saturday, Sundays you'll get paid. So while they're not really punching attendance. So I'm saying we could start with one objective, but we should obviously connect the dots and see the interlinkages in terms of the other associated processes, so you make sure there's a comprehensive review. The second one, I think, and there are many such examples, but I think the second one would be somewhere close to me, would be where, you know, your auditee comes and says, ye dil mange more. So otherwise we usually pushed back, saying, I don't want the auditor coming. And that will be only when they really see the value. So there was one such audit where we done, I will not disclose details, but it was done for the first time. And the kind of findings that people saw, the CFO came back and said that, you know, why don't you extend your audit period and cover the entire, you know, 10-year period, so that I am certain that now there's nothing missing. So that's the kind of comfort probably stakeholders will draw, and they will understand you're relevant when they see the value. The third is, so if you see IA success at Tata Capital, I would say, and contribute this to everyone in Tata Capital, there's a very close collaborative culture. So when we started a project with respect to predictive sampling, which is trying to identify, you know, which cases would probably get delinquent, and hence we should pick them for sampling. It was a project where we worked very closely with credit, because they have the underwriting insights, with predictive technologies with the data science team, and obviously the internal audit past experience and know-how. So in terms of collaborating with all stakeholders, understanding who are your advocates in the system, and moving from quick wins to win-wins. So pick the easier ones, and obviously then move to the win-wins. So these are some of the stories that we have.
Thank you so much, Abha. In fact, I kind of correlate to one of the initial examples which you mentioned. I also faced a similar situation wherein the salary was being processed before the employee actually joined. Fortunately, we didn't have their bank account numbers, so it was not being paid, but at least it was getting processed, including the statutory payments and all. So that was, you know, I think quite common and similar. Mr. Anirban, I'd like to know from you.
Well, in terms of success stories, there are many success stories. Let me tell you, I mean, I feel very honored and proud that, you know, today when I talk about a success story, 4 years back, we started preparing a deck every year, which is our achievement deck. And we used to go to every MD and every CFO. I mean, I used to go to those people to have a cup of coffee and discuss what are the typical achievements. Because unless and until you mention your success to the senior leader, people do not perhaps understand. I mean, so that is one thing that I did, and that is what is the collaborative approach. You know, in many times you go and you sort of tell them that this is what I have done. And actually, yes, if you look at the recommendations, there are fantastic recommendations that people make that are implementable, feasible, implemented, actual, you know, process getting simplified, cost getting optimized. A lot of benefits were there. In typically giving some example, there are a lot of vendor optimization. The entire RPG group today, I can say, is all policies, procedures, everything is coded. And in CEAT, because of this coding business, everything is written. We have won the Deming Prize also. And we were a key contributor to getting this Deming Prize in CEAT. And I consciously use the word we because CEAT is just one of the group companies. That is one success. I think, you know, for everything you will find something, some written material which is there. Nothing is out of thin air. A lot of vendor work, the procurement strategy work through internal audit value enhancement mode we have carried out, which is like comparing the value by vis-a-vis the criticality to operations, because there are 4 manufacturing companies there in the RPG group. So criticality vis-a-vis the value and where to employ a strategic sourcing, where to employ a non-strategic sourcing, where do you go for a single party quotation, where do you go for a proprietary party quotation, where do you invite an OEM to only participate. The delegation of authority, how essentially it will change for every level of procurement, So all those kind of things we consider as, and those are operating quite effectively for a period more than 5 years. So therefore, these are, I think, I consider these to be our success stories. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Anirban. So, it's always fascinating to hear such kind of success stories, because I'm sure as an internal auditor, more than anything else, at the end of the day, if you've managed to bring in a good improvement or any change, process change in the organization through your internal audit or otherwise, it gives you a different kind of satisfaction, and I think that's what we kind of attempt to achieve at
Nikhil, I mean, my thing is that I have seen a lot of internal auditors, and I see internal auditors do a lot of things but do not tell. So I would essentially tell people and recommend here sitting on the stage that please go and tell, this is what has come out of an internal audit recommendation. Yeah. Please socialize with your stakeholders, with your auditees, and tell them, at least 5 times in a year.
Show them where you've added value.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because otherwise people tend to not understand, tend to underestimate, and several other things happen. So here we must socialize because we are doing a great job.
Absolutely.
I think we are doing a great job. Only thing, I don't know, we always feel that, there is a, maybe it is already there. Maybe it is, if I bring it in the report, whether the auditee will react. So a strengthy internal auditor has to always go and tell that this is what has happened because of internal audit. I am no less than a business.
I'll just add one point. I think since we are at success stories, just something that I remembered. Everybody remembers the success, but it's like the effort paradox. There's a lot of hard work that goes in terms of the transformation. Basis our experience, we can say there will be failures, and I don't call them failures, but we call them learnings. So you all should not get disappointed. There was once a project which we'd taken up about 10 years ago on data analytics in the organization, and it didn't go well. It didn't go well not because our strategy was not right, but the quality of data was not good. So garbage in, garbage out. And so we took it as a learning, and we parked it then. And when the data lake came up and there was like a cleaned up data available, is when we re-embarked on that journey. So I think 2 messages: there are no failures, there will be learnings. And second is, obviously your pace has to be in alignment with the organization's pace. There is no one cookie cutter approach. It will always have to consider where the organization is and then accordingly plan your strategy. Yeah, Deepti, sorry.
No, I think I was just hearing Abha in terms of, mentioning Dil Mange More. So, I was just resonating in terms of one of the experiences that I had, and take pride in saying that there was a situation where, the MD instructed the business that let not incremental disbursement happen till the time there was a launch of a new product. Till the time the internal audit comes up with their independent, report. So that was a value add, and I felt that this is where organization looks up to the internal audit team to add more value. And there was a situation I would like to share over here. It was a COVID time where in one of the organizations where I worked with, and it was complete lockdown, and it was a branch audit setup. So we had multiple branches across Pan-India. And our auditors couldn't travel to those places because everything was shut. And considering the collateral, which was quite material, resting on all of these branches had to be audited. And then we drawn synergies between the risk team and internal audit to just find out who is the nearest person, because we didn't have auditors' reach and presence there. So who is the nearest person in the company who can go and audit? So we trained these employees within the organization. It was like a guest auditor program where these employees had signed off confidentiality arrangement in terms of sharing of information, and they acted on behalf of internal audit to deliver and which were later on remotely audited by the central team in terms of the quality of the work that was done. So that was drawing, synergies within the organization during tough times where, we were challenged is what I wanted to share. So, and everyone should, look up to the respective, management in terms of need, but with safeguards, as I would always say. Yeah.
Raman gets the mic. Doesn't get the mic.
Until the coordinator says I don't speak.
So let's move on to another interesting topic of technology. With the influx of technology like digital audits, data analytics, RPA, I think the role of internal audit has evolved. And for internal audit, I think technology represents an opportunity as well as a responsibility. And I'm sure all of us would understand that where technology was 5 years back was completely different, and I'm sure in the coming 5 years also there will be a lot of evolvement in technology. So considering the dynamic nature of technology and the ever-changing global scenario, I think technology will always be a mean to achieve the end result. So Mr. Raman, I'd like to understand from you in your organization, what role does technology play in enhancing the efficacy and effectiveness of your internal audit process?
Oh, that's a big one. So let me start with this. I mean, I think Anirban and I and some in the audience may know what a computer looked like in those days. Who wouldn't know? So a 5 MB computer would occupy half this stage. 5 MB computer will occupy half this stage. And today what we have, a chip with maybe 1 terabyte, which can be like this much. And it can fit into your coat pocket, shirt pocket, it can be hidden, data can be hidden and taken away. That's what technology has done. So, of course it's made us all lazy. We at fingertips, everything is available. So as they say, chota packet, bada dhamaka. So technology has shrunk in size, we have grown in size. So use of technology is a given in any organization. And we are no different. And actually COVID brought out the best in us, whether it was remote auditing for us or we were one company, you people should understand, we had 0 revenue in COVID. Because the first thing that was hit was hospitality industry because there was a lot of touch. So rooms were not occupied, there was no restaurants, the restaurants were going empty. We in fact let out our rooms to the medicos. People, they couldn't go home, so we let them out to the medicos and we didn't earn anything. We were 0 revenue. I'm proud to say our company borrowed to pay salaries. None of us were retrenched or asked to go, none of the staff. But that's, I think, true of most group companies, including the Tata Group. So at that time, we decided how to shore up some bit of revenue, make use of people who we are paying for. So the restaurants were not operating. So we decided on doing something called dining at home. Okay, so we brought in Cumin. So you people would know Cumin is something where you order over an app and you will get your food in corrugated boxes and you can have a meal at home as if you're having a Taj. Yeah, you won't have the Taj cutlery and crockery, but you will get the Taj food on your dining table. We also brought about the new brand called Amma was brought in where you can drive down to your closest location. You won't believe Nashik, Pune, here, Fisherman's Cove and Chennai, Chandigarh and Shimla and North, they were going full during COVID because people could drive down because the trains were not running, flights you couldn't take. So the only thing you could do was drive down to the closest hotel. These hotels were going full because, I'm talking about a period just after COVID, when COVID was still there, but some relaxation was there. So we brought in the concept of Amma, we brought in the concept of bizcation, staycation, all this with the help of technology, because there was no way somebody could do a physical reservation. Everything was technology. So we also introduced something called Taj at home for those who wanted to experience how the Taj bed feels like. You can't do it at home. So you get the same blanket, you get the same duvets, same pillows, everything you can buy and put it at home. Of course, that was not a big business stream, but nevertheless. So, but of course, even before that, Taj had technology by way of customer information system, what we call CIS. So when you walk into a restaurant, and if you're a regular at the restaurant, the guy will come and say, I mean, like ask you, sir, regular mineral water? I mean, he knows that you have mineral water, or you'll ask, sir, your regular paneer butter masala, or things like that. Because he knows in the system he has that Anirban is very fond of, say, mutton or a paneer butter masala, and he will ask him like that. So that's customer information system, which was run very successfully even before COVID happened, and now even more so. So even for audit, we have the use of technology, and all that I have talked about, we introduced something called iZest during COVID, where it was touchless experience. So people were still scared to touch a pen with which to sign the registration card in the hotel. So they were given iPads. Then even that was not, foolproof. That could have had some virus. So we said, no, don't bother. We'll now give you access on your own phone. So we started sending them links on something called EcoBills. So right from the time they make a booking to the time they check out, they don't have to come in touch with any of the staff at the hotel. Pens, iPads, registration cards. We even wanted to see whether the mobile could access the room door. That was difficult, but otherwise you don't have to even touch the door handle. You just walk in. So, but then that was done with sterilization and stuff like that. So all these were the technological advancements done by the company. And why I mention all this is not to do with internal audit, but as I mentioned, I convert all these operational activities, I convert them into controls for my own internal audit. And therefore, those became very important for me as controls. Because otherwise, if I were to impose more controls when already the staff were burdened with multiple other restrictions, that would have been very difficult.
Thank you so much. Now, moving on, I feel internal auditor today stands at a crossroad where it can continue with business as usual and await the consequences of the next major audit disaster. Alternatively, it can embrace the need for major reform and push itself towards a new, improved audit model in planning and execution. So as CAEs of your respective organizations, how do you ensure that you, along with your team, stay updated on emerging trend, regulations, and best practices in the field? How does an internal auditor today upgrade himself regularly to stay competitive? Deepti, will start with you.
So Nikhil, coming from the BFSI sector, which is so dynamic and ever evolving, for the internal auditor, it's paramount and it's important to stay relevant. And I'm saying this because the way the RBI has been coming up with the regulations and the way the industry has been shaping up, it's very important. So there are few easy tips in which the employees or within the internal audit team can benefit. One is we have a close WhatsApp group, including the CAs, where we are real time kept informed of what's happening in the industry, and we pass it on to our team members. And there is a status update in terms of what's happening. So if there is a penalty, if an RBI raises a penalty on any of the banks or an NBFC, immediately the compliance team is put on task to understand whether if those areas do apply for us, and if at all, what controls do we have in place in terms of addressing those areas, and if not, there's an action plan that is in place, put up across to the CXCs or the CXOs to take a stock of what's happening. In terms of attending seminars or webinars, there are online trainings. IIA comes up with good trainings, and also it's at the endeavor for the CA is like ensure the entire team attends those trainings and keep themselves updated. And of course, I mean in the digital world, everything is real time. So, you're so closely connected with all of us, with everyone in the fraternity. So what's happening is everyone is kept aware. I have taken initiative in my early organizations where the chief risk officer, the IA head, and the CISO, we collectively, drive on a quarterly we used to drive quarterly, 2 or 3 hours of a training where we used to take the entire, company, all the employees in terms of sensitizing them in terms of their roles and responsibilities. So it's not about the internal audit to come and tell in terms of how the risk needs to be managed. It is the first and the second line also equally important so that they understand their roles and responsibility. So that's where the update goes in terms of training and sensitization within the company.
Thank you so much, Deepti. Anirban?
So for our company, it is 60 hours of learning and within the function itself, driven by the CAEs,
Okay.
driven by the group.
Okay.
Then from the organization, there is a learning and development method, and which is they have a program called LDAP, Learning and Development Annual Plan or something, and where the developmental needs, behavioral needs, functional needs all are essentially identified once in a year. And then RPG group as a group, they spend a lot of money on learning and development. So ours is 60 hours plus whatever the group does for us. This 60 hours is essentially for technical upgradation of ourselves. Individual members are given tasks, and then there is a training calendar. Every week, Thursdays, 1:45 to 3 o'clock is the training time for all of us. All of us, we join on a Zoom call, and we do discuss around, if not anything, an accounting standard. Because some of the accounting standards, the AS7, the Purana AS7 is still extremely relevant for a construction company like KEC. So we analyze the accounting standards, we analyze global auditing standards, the SIAs. So that's typically technical for us. So that's 60 hours plus whatever the group provides. That's the simple.
It is important to be disciplined when it comes to learning.
No, 60 hours is something which is a part of our goal setting process. If you do it, you do not get a positive notch. If you don't do it, then you get a negative notch. So that's the kind of standard that we have, because this is absolute training and internal audit. Anything to do with audit is inseparable. We must not, compromise on all those aspects.
Absolutely. Abha?
So we've got something which is a WWW. What it means is a weekly Wednesday webinar. So there's one person in the team who will pick up a topic of relevance of what they've done, and the other week it will be a general topic. So everybody in the team gets a turn to present once every week. So that's one thing that's mandated. Second is, which we've driven with a smaller section, but we're going to make it at a larger scale, is that as chartered accountants, you need to also improve in terms of your presentation skills. So every month, there's one day dedicated to learning, where whatever people have done in the month, they will come and make a presentation, and the participants will kind of do the voting, and whoever's voted best gets the quarterly award. So that's the second thing. It has two benefits. People make sure that they need to complete because they have to present in the month, and it also helps them prepare in terms of FAQs and improve their communication. Third is obviously the regular HR-based trainings that happen, but I think what really helps, and for those who don't like reading a lot like me, are the social media updates that you have, or networking updates. So I think if you really need to increase your net worth, since we're sitting with CAs, I think it's networking. The more you interact with like-minded people in forums like these, and exchange thoughts, exchange ideas, understand how they do things better, I think even if there are 1 or 2 takeaways that you get in the day, I think it goes a long way. So, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Raman?
So I'll split this into two, internal and external. Internally, we have our executive committee, which gives us inputs on what's changing, what's new, and stuff like that, and how we need to kind of change accordingly. Also, since we are the leaders in hospitality, our leaders are in different positions in various associations. So we get to know from there also what movement is. Additionally, we get external speakers, external experts who come and address us once a quarter, so we know changes which can be foreseen, which has not yet come in, but can be foreseen. Other than that, the best practice sharing, I mean, I don't want to take up more time because they have spoken about it, but we have a very strong Tata Group Internal Audit Forum. As Deepti mentioned, it's a WhatsApp group. It's vibrating throughout. And of course, the larger CAE group, WhatsApp group is also very active. So every day you have somebody or the other giving some input. So those help from this thing. We have, I am actually the, the convener of the Hospitality Study Circle for Colaba, which has been, of course, registered under ICAI. So there again, we have sessions on common interests, where again, people from different backgrounds come and give us some inputs. These are the ways we pick up on best practices.
Thank you so much. So I think this kind of re-emphasizes the need to stay updated, and few takeaways that I had was you need to be disciplined in your quest for knowledge, networking like Abha mentioned, and attending such seminars, sessions, forums, and keep yourself updated. So I think that effort needs to be there. Of course, the organizations will help, but the effort and the willingness also needs to come from all the budding auditors. Of late, business partnering is something that every company emphasizes when it comes to setting up expectations for the internal audit function. Gone are the days when auditors were only expected to find faults, or now they are also expected to identify areas of improvement. Not only areas of improvement, but somewhere also passively responsible for helping the organization in achieving its goals and objectives. So we have a lot of current as well as I'm presuming future CAEs in the room today. So as CAEs with such a wide experience yourselves, what is the advice that you would give to the organizations looking to improve their internal audit practices, or probably implement a successful internal audit initiatives so as to meet the expectation of the company and the audit committee? Anirban, will start with you.
I'll keep it short and simple. I mean, essentially, if we summarize whatever in the last half an hour, 45 minutes that what we have discussed, the first thing to stay relevant is to collaborate. And, I personally feel that, internal auditors have this tendency of working in a silo and not going and confronting is probably a wrong word, discussing the audit observations or the recommendations or whatever. Is it an improvement opportunity or an observation or whatever? As we go, they always wait for a later date or maybe a week before the audit committee, 2 weeks before the audit committee to sort of, come out with the observations and the recommendation when the reports are finalized. So proactive collaboration is something which is the critical success factor that I personally see, because, people, as I mentioned in this forum at the beginning of our panel discussion, people do not understand, people as in non-internal audit people, non-auditors, they do not understand what is the difference between an issue and an internal audit issue. So therefore, please collaborate with people, know more, have coffee with people, have tea with people, and discuss more with people. And that will give you a better edge. Do not wait for the end of this thing. So that is what I would probably recommend to in this course.
Thank you so much. Raman, will take your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I will just quickly add to what Anirban said. Of course, you're right. Gone are the days when we used to be called bloodhound.
Yeah, bloodhound.
Auditors
Watchdogs,
are bloodhounds, then
yeah.
watchdogs.
Yeah.
Now we are all gone beyond all that. We are now value creators. Okay, at least I would like to believe that way. We have to be the right partner with business, identify where we can help them. See, otherwise, what is your purpose? I mean, you can always give the stiff upper lip and say, no, I'm internal audit, I will not. That's not the way. I mean, you can do that. Nobody is asking you to let go of your independence and all of that. But why can't you be, you can see some things, why can't you do something more? I will quickly add on to what these people have been talking about success stories. I'll give you an example. When we went to, there is a requirement under the FRRO, I forget the full form, it's Foreign Residence Registration Order, if I'm not mistaken. It's a long form for CID office. So they require that any foreigner who comes into the country and stays in a hotel or a lodge has to get registered within 24 hours. They have information has to go from the hotel to the FRRO office. So there were a lot of challenges that we had. I will not go into those details. But when we were doing this exercise, we found that when we take visa for any country, we take visa for that country. Say Sweden you're going to, you take Sweden visa or US visa. When Pakistanis and Bangladeshis take visa for India, they get it only for the city they are traveling to. So if you're traveling to Bombay, you will get visa for Bombay and not even to Navi Mumbai. That's how the visa process works for those countries. Of course, I'm sure they have their reasons with them. But this is the kind of, we found that out. And when we found that out, it was like a jolt. Oh, this is something which is new. Similarly, read the fine print. It's like Abha mentioned, not everyone loves reading. So when an electricity bill comes in your unit, nobody bothers because people are changing. Today I am the channel manager or chief engineer. Tomorrow he is there. So I have not bothered. He is not bothered. It's going on. So when we looked at the electricity bill, we saw that there was a rebate on watt usage, WATT, watt usage. And if you use beyond a particular wattage, there was a rebate of 3%. Okay? The unit was 23 years old. We saw that right from day one till date, nobody has bothered looking into it. We went into that deep. We worked it out, gave the inputs to the unit, and told them to write to the electricity board. It's a government electricity board, not one of the Tata Powers or Reliance Powers or Adani Power. Within 3 months, we've got a credit of 60 lakhs. I mean, for that unit, it's a huge sum of money. For any unit, 60 lakhs is a huge sum of money coming back from a government-owned electricity board. I mean, so those are the touch points I'm talking about. I got a few other points which I can talk about, but what I'm saying is create value. Don't look at it only as a function where you have to find fault. Rather go into it looking at it as if it's your own area of business and how can you add value to that.
Thank you so much. I think, all of these experiences and insights have been really helpful. Before we conclude, I'd like to open the floor for any questions from anyone. Can we pass on the mic there? So there is a request from the panelists to ask simple questions, please.
Thank you for your insights.
We'll just take that and come back.
Yes. Thank you for your insights. So my question is, for the firms that work with you, where do you feel is the immediate need for them to say improve themselves, or you can say the immediate quick win that they need to have so that the overall audit quality experience improves all across the board? This is an open question to all the panelists.
So, Mr. Raman, since you have a co-source model,
You have to, there is no two ways about it. Every firm has to grow into a role where if, like I mentioned about value creation, the firm has to start thinking in terms of as if they are the head of audit of that particular organization. It's a caterpillar grows into a butterfly. It takes some time, but that is a natural process. It has to happen. Similarly, we as internal auditors or the audit firms, I mean, I speak on behalf of my audit firms, they have to necessarily grow into that butterfly, otherwise they'll be left behind. So you either have to adapt and make a living out of it. I'm using the word using the phrase making a living out of it. But I'm saying if you don't adapt, you're going to be left behind. So it's very important, and continuous improvement. I'm sure all the firms are doing that. Continuous improvement is necessary. From our side, we can always impart the education to them, the awareness of the various controls that they need to look at. Of course, it's a collaborative work, as Anirban also mentioned, because it's not just me or us who can tell them, it's them also. Sometimes they bring in very good insights saying that, why didn't we look at it this way? So it works both ways, and I think that's what will make the firms do their job in an enriching way.
I think the firms take a lot of time. I think if in a typical bottoms-up approach where the junior most team members start writing the planning memo, and then the partner and the director come only at a later stage. So if you actually flip the process, and if you start with a partner director 4 hours, 5 hours, a day's work at the beginning, then perhaps a 14 days work can be completed in 4 days. I mean, that is my, my belief. My belief. I think, guys are taking a lot of time. They can crash it.
I just wanted to add on what Anirban just mentioned. The expectation is, at least they understand our expectation as what head of internal audit wants from them. So that kind of a discussion, if it happens at the start and also, in between, because there are, changes or updates that keep coming in. So close interaction with the CAE to just understand what the expectation is and getting the right skill set of the resources that we are looking for. So what I've started is I've started interviewing, the people who will be onboarded in the respective project to just understand the skills and competencies that they bring to the table. So, yeah.
I once serviced Abha's company. So you'll give feedback to...
So now you hear the feedback.
No, so I think Anirban on the other side was bang on. He was very, very effective. But having interacted with a lot of service providers, I think the expectation is how quickly can you come on board, and that's what Anirban reflected too, is how quickly can you understand our environment. So I think a clear-cut understanding of the scoping and the prioritization when you're taking the engagement, and maybe not being hesitant to reach out to the person who matters in the organization. Because a lot of time goes in terms of follow-up, data requirements, etc. And the communication that you may get may not be complete. So make sure that your scoping and prioritization is right so that you understand what matters to your client, and make sure you're interacting and periodically communicating with the person who matters, and not have any hesitation in at times, copying and involving the senior guys so that the overall TAT is crunched. Because I think today's day and age, time is what really matters, and getting that input faster.
Thank you so much. Any other questions?
I'm happy, but it is out of time. The only question is, today's generation is not sticking to the 10. People are jumping from packages to packages. They are not understanding each generation. So I want the only question is, first is how to develop patience, because the generation is jumping from year to year to year. When I left my job to do something else, but I am strong enough what I want to do. I only want to answer the panel. As you talk about interview, first impression
So I think the question was, if I may just want to recap, you wanted to ask if how to develop patience. So for the interviewer or for the interviewee? For both. Okay.
We are bright chartered accountant. You are the one who are in service with the Now I've shifted from service to practice, but there are many more into service industry. Na? So for them, I'm asking the questions. Because people are jumping from packages to package, they are not gaining experience. My elders were working for 25 years. I have not worked for 5 months also. I left my job within 5 months. But they were into like, how can you leave the
See, I mean, I can always say that, in a corporate, when the interviews happen, they go through a series of process. There's a screening that happens, and the HR round, and the technical round, and then the final round. So the person who is giving the interview has, these many, stages to cross through. And overall, the feedback is being, assembled and collated in terms of the both technical as well as the behavioral skills and the fitment from the core, values which the company would be looking for from the candidate. So overall, in this entire process, there is a lot of patience as far as the companies are concerned. And of course, it's in terms of the in terms of the fitment of the candidate as far as the job role is concerned is where the organizations, they definitely look for. Now coming to the question on you in terms of the candidate having patience, of course, if the first interview is not, you can always come back and ask for a feedback from the HR in terms of what went wrong. And if at all there is, of course, I think definitely the company, comes up with the feedback in terms of the fitment or the role, wherein whatever the reason they would have, felt for your enhancement perspective, they will definitely come back. But of course, I mean, have patience, as I would say. Of course, there is a better plan, and I would always say if the one interview doesn't happen, the God has better plans for each one of us. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Deepti. So now I hope the insights that we've gained today serve as a reference point and inspire us to do better. Let us continue to collaborate and inspire one another as we navigate through the ever-evolving landscape of internal audit. I extend my gratitude to our panelists for their invaluable contributions, as well as to each and every one of you all for your continued participation. Thank you so much.